Testing sound. Oh, that worked. So that's always a good test to run. Let's see here. Things bleeping at me. Oh yes, I know why that's bleeping at me. So today we are going to be working on uh, adding some testing for some things that aren't being well tested now uh, for the parser for variable declarations. So uh, let's see, setting up a couple of things. Yep. All right. So we have some things with variable declarations. I did sprinkle in here. Here, I just some of them I changed, some of them I duplicated and added a test. Like we can't do x equals 42 unless we've declared x first. But if we have declared x, it works just great. So that test is here, and it needs a space. And JetBrains needs to handle focus follows mouse correctly. All right. I'm going to scroll through here and fix spacing on some of the chests. And here, trying to access an identifier before it's declared doesn't work. Here, I just added var in to make things work because I didn't really need a separate test. I actually think I should add a const keyword at some point too. Partly because I'm thinking of adding functions as the next feature, and functions I'm going to implement as a const identifier. Um, and additionally, I'm only going to allow functions to be declared in the global scope or the top level scope. But yeah, I might allow closures. I don't know. Closures are complicated to implement in in the kind of language I would like this to be. I don't want stack frames to have to be uh, allocated on the heap, or activation records, I should say. I do not want activation records to be allocated on the heap, which is what you would have to do in order to have true closures. Yeah. I'd have to implement memory management for these stack frames, all kinds of stuff. It would be obnoxious. All right. Now this is a simple change that's a spacing only change. So uh, it's good to keep spacing only changes as their own change, because otherwise they kind of uh, clutter up a change and make it confusing when you're looking at an individual change. Like there's a whole big bunch of stuff that changed that has nothing to do with any code that you need to pay attention to. And that's kind of annoying. So it's good to have white space changes be their own thing, if you can manage it. So what kinds of tests do we want to add? I already have attempt to use a variable before declaring it. I have attempt to uh, assign to a variable before declaring it. So both of those are checked. The last thing that I want to check is here. Yes. Yeah, we're going to require that the check result not equal to token send. Yeah, I guessed very wrong here. what's the real end here? The real end is 80 at exactly 80, so it's fine. Let's check this. In fact, actually, I think that's the only test that I need to add. I think that covers most of the cases that I want to check. Oh my, this is a one. Oh, I got the number of tokens wrong. All right. All this is just garbage output that one day I should fix. Um, again, the result should be null pointer, but right now it's not. Error handling in general needs to be improved. Check the language of the other to-dos. So there we go. Actually, I'm going to try various. Well, I think this covers all the important cases. Um, there might be other cases that are worth covering, like what if somebody does var x equal? Does that work? Various other kinds of token combinations trying to fool the parser. I don't know if that's a terribly useful thing to do. That almost seems like it should be fuzz tested instead of tested with something like this. So I'm going to do that. Uh, uh, Maybe later at some point. Um, all right, let's see here. No, no. All right. So we've got those out of the way. Now let's think about function declarations. Um, I'm going to introduce a keyword for function declarations. So let's go here. If I use a keyword, I can make the identifier optional. If there is no identifier, then it's an anonymous function, and it's an expression that has a value. But if it does have an identifier, then it's a statement um, that, well, yeah, in this language, everything has a value. Um, not, I could handle the no identifier case right now. Um, but that introduces the idea of types. Um, and I want to, because a function is a function. Function is an identifier that has a value. So it's a variable. But It's not a variable that contains an integer, which is what all variables in this language currently contain. All variables in this language currently contain an unsigned integer. But I'm introducing an identifier that contains something that's not an unsigned integer. If I allowed anonymous functions and then assigning them to a declared variable, then suddenly you have a variable that the user, the person who's writing the program, has declared that is no longer a signed or an unsigned integer. um, and there's no way in the language to talk about variables like that. So I don't think I will even allow functions to be passed as parameters initially. And I think I'm going to demand that they be named, because if you don't have, because if you don't have them be named, then that means you have uh, a value floating around that's of some type that can't be assigned to anything, because you can't declare things of that type. And so I'm going to require that def be followed by an identifier. Um, and uh, honestly, I really should add a const keyword too, as well as the var keyword, um, for declaring constants. But if you have pointers, if you have complex types like C allows, uh, then or that's a very interesting case too. I won't think about that. Adding a type system to the language is something I might do, probably will do as the step after this. But right now, I'm just going to add functions. Um, so there we go, functions. So we're going to have a def keyword, and then we're going to look for var, which is going to be a little polluted, because var is also part of the word variant. Um, and this if-else list is starting to get a little unwieldy. Yep. All right. So we have the drill now. One other thing to worry about for tokens. Is there any tokens that start with def? No. So it will match this first. It will consider it to be a keyword before it considers it to be an identifier. And it has no chance of being confused for one of these things. So yeah, that's good. All right. And let's look for var in here. Here we go. A spot where there. I probably should have these keyword names be a tokens.hpp, but that would mean tokens.hpp needs to include Hmm. I'm not going to do that now. This whole thing is ripe for making some data structures to remove all of this repeated code. But I'm not going to do it now. Uh, there are a bunch of cases where we have these case statements here. And the case statements, the nested case statement things, I'm not so keen on necessarily getting rid of those. But we should have some way to translate between uh, uh, operator and, right? Um, like we should have operator names here or operator strings or something here inside this operator class as a static, public static variable. Uh, it's a struct, so it would not be a default public. But yes, as a public static variable, so that this enum can easily be mapped to a string. And the same here for keyword. This one, no, not for parents, maybe, but no. Um, but for those two, this one and this one, there should be some kind of member thingy in here that says, you know, hey, the enum value if is if um yeah. And in general, we should have, in fact, a way to convert every token to some kind of string representation. One of the reasons why we should have that is because here in the tests, it would be very nice when we're doing that the token list comparisons, because the token list comparisons right now just tell us the token list didn't match. But if the tokens were capable of being printed out or converted to strings, uh, then the catch two would be smart enough to go, oh, here's your list. Here are the ones that didn't match and show you what they were. Uh, but it's not. And so, yeah, but yeah, they don't convert. So I would need to figure that out. Um, Probably use a visitor. Uh, but the visitor could make use of stuff that was in here. Anyway, I'm just going over design ideas. I've completed the basic task. I can run the program again and it will work. The tests, um, because I added a new keyword, but there's nothing that uses it. So that's fine. Uh, but I do need to go add that to the tokenizer tests now. Um, and actually, I'm going to add a plan here for how this thing is going to be used. Uh, uh, And then here we are going to require like that. Um, that's correct. And expr list needs to be then defined. Uh, so is this equivalent to no? Needs to be like that. Which also means we need a new token. It's good that we did this. Uh, is it an operator? I mean, yes, sort of an operator. Uh, I'm going to call it punctuation, not operator. There. And I mean, I suppose you could consider uh, parens and curly brackets to be punctuators, but I don't because they have one fundamental difference. They have to occur in matching pairs. Like if I were to implement quoted strings, for example, I would end up doing stuff with the back quote or the quote. Yeah, I would end up doing stuff with the quote that's similar. I wouldn't call the quote a punctuator. Um, I would call although quotes have to occur in pairs. Oh, it's tricky. It's tricky. Also, too, I might just skip out on this escape semantics um, and do something really bizarre for escaping. Because parsing out the backslashes for the escapes. I'm just thinking about what I would do if I added strings, um, which need escapes because you need to be able to have a double quote instead of a double quoted string. And if, yeah, can't, then yep. All right. But I wouldn't consider quotes to be punctuators either because they have to occur in pairs. And that's an important feature of them. And to some extent, it kind of doesn't matter as long as you can figure out what token it is that you're talking about. It doesn't really matter whether you call that put it the token into the operator category, the punctuator category, or the paren category. I mean, one thing I could do, for example, is collapse the paren and curly bracket categories into uh, to the matching pair category, because then maybe some later day I want to use square brackets as well, as a category, and it might make sense to always be able to talk about the open and close as pairs. I don't know. I don't know. But I don't consider comma to be really an operator, and I don't want to call it an operator. And while these categories are fuzzy and arbitrary to some extent, I'm making the decision, because I'm the person writing the program, that punctuators are a different kind of token than an operator is. There we go. Let's see here. Uh, right. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're just going to have it be a comma. Um, two commas in a row will be two separate punctuators. That's fine. That's a test that we should have. Um, oh, oops. I mean, AI suggested it and I didn't hit tab. Um, but that also means I need to have a test for punctuator here. And we'll add these in the order they appear. So identifier, then punctuator, then operator. Identifier, then like that. That's correct, but punctuator didn't declare this enum, but I didn't actually say that there was a value there. Now I'll have to say there's a value. There, that should cause this in place back to actually work now. Again, this should, I'm going to try just building this and not running the tests. It should build. It doesn't like this. Why doesn't it like it? Lots of reasons. Probably related to not wanting to do this in place back. Yes. Why does it not like this when it was perfectly fine to do this, like this? So what's different about my declaration for operator? There isn't anything that's different about my declaration for operator. Struct punctuator base enum comma comma value. That's all kosher. It's the same. Why doesn't it work? Oh, I know why. That is silly. That is silly. Identifier, uh, punctuator. That's the reason why. The error message was totally unhelpful, completely unhelpful. I'm wondering if Clang would have given me a better error message. I guess if we'd gotten all the way to the bottom it would have started talking about variant. And once it started talking about variant, it would have been like, oh, that's what your error is. Um, so, wow. Yes. All right, that's better. So here in parser, I added some comments with the BNF for the program, the production for expr list, um, which is only used here. Oh, actually, one interesting thing is that it doesn't have to be, it can be an optional expr list. Because right now, this definition for expr list requires there to be at least one expression. Um, and that's it's fine, but I want to have functions that don't declare, that don't have an expression list, that have that have an empty expression list that you just call and they do something. Of course, yeah, those things would be side effects, which in the current state of the programming language would be modifying global variables, which is evil and wrong. But yes, that would actually be an interesting rule to implement. No variable declarations in the global scope. I would only allow that after I set consts. Um, and I don't know that I would allow that at all. Uh, yeah, but it's an interesting idea. Maybe assignment normally can't assign to variables in the global scope, and you must use a special form of the assignment function for it to allow you to assign to variables in the global scope. Maybe I will do that to basically force signaling of the use of the globals, a globally scoped variable name. Oh, actually, there's some other tests that I meant to test for the variable declarations and I missed. Uh, well, that's a good. So there are a couple of things I could do with this. So Mercurial has an extension called Mercurial queues, which is a little like the git stash command um, that I can use to sort of save the work that I've been doing to be able to return to it later. And one of the things I have to be very careful is to not do any pushes while anything on the Mercurial queues are applied. Um, in fact, the phase should be considered like secret. Mercurial has this phase idea, and I need to experiment with it a bit more. Uh, I don't know if there's a better alternative to Mercurial queues hidden in the phases, but yeah. So I could go back and finish the tests that I need to finish for variable declarations. Um, I could just add the tests and just not commit the other files because these tests should only affect this file. So how many tokens should this be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It should be 14, not 11. And not it is, its value should change. All right. In this particular case, I don't think I care about the save result. I think I can just do this. In which case I can just do this. Yep, like that. With the empty parens, actually, it looks like a function declaration. Yeah, but that works. Okay, that should work. Now I have to go back and look up how my simple evaluator works with the save result. How does the save result work again? Okay. There we go. And we should check. And is that what it's called now? First, this will have a result. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, each of those expressions will have a result. The assignment statement. Yeah. These headphones keep on spontaneously turning off, and I'm not completely sure why. They are very nice headphones in all respects, except for the fact that they spontaneously turn off. Oh, I know why. They spontaneously turn off because no sound is coming through the headphones. The only thing that's happening is I'm speaking into the mic. The headphones should be smart enough to know that I'm only speaking into the mic and there's no sound coming through the headphones. And so yeah. I'll have to check and see. I might have to install Windows in a VM or something so I can run the stupid setting software from the headphone manufacturer. I wish they had a better way of doing the settings. Results. Da, 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 da. First of all, how does Simple Evaluator work again? It has I should have done a statement function. So when is statement function called? Because I want to be careful about making sure that uh, statement list. So every statement in a statement list is a statement function. Now that is statement function is used to save the result. Okay, so that works. That works. That's about what I was expecting, but I just wanted to check. Oh yes, in the test. So we are indeed expecting 4 results down here. And why can't you check results.size? It's a vector. And oh, stupid thing. Eval current result. I don't actually care about that. I mean, yes, I kind of do. So we'll check. And we actually want current result to be 10, not 20. But check results 3 is 20. Check results 2, 0, 1, 2, yes, is 10. Yep. Actually, it's the other way around. There. Let's try running all of these tests. Oh, come on. this particular case, stop that. Tokens.size equals 16. No, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 16, because I added that extra X thing here. And actually, the current result should be 10. Oh no, 20. There. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yep, 13. All right, and then this should be 16. Yes. You know, this code completion thing is not all it's cracked up to be. Uh, again, the result here should be 10, not 20. Not var, like that. There. Now let's try compiling it and see what happens. Okay, go. So this was a parse failure? Why was this a parse failure? That came out to be 10. It should absolutely not have been 10. It should have been, oh no, it should have been 20. Embarrassed. Okay, that one's, fix that one because it's true. The test was wrong. This was a parse failure. Why was it a parse failure? Well, this is just time for some debugging, I guess. No. Debug. Oh my, such a fantastic debugger here. Okay. Now, step over. And then here, step into. All kinds of Well, let's look at this parse tree and find out. Yes, there is a variable declaration in the top level statement list. Okay, that's a binary operation. What's the binary operation here? What? Ten. There is no binary operation. What the heck? Hello there. How are you? From whence do you hail? Ah, Twitch. I'm streaming on several different platforms at the same time, and so uh, it's not always clear where somebody comes from. I'm trying to debug my parser right now. I have been since I was a child, since I was 8 years old. Hello there, Sky. I am debugging my parser and I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with it. You know what I think I'm going to do? Um, this is the part that's failing. Basically what's happening is the remainder is not pointing at the end of the token list. Um, so let's figure out, let's stop this. Let's see about printing out an in-order traversal. Indeed, that's what we want right here. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to print out this. I did some simple games when I was very young. Uh, and I did work very briefly for about 3 or 4 months on the Bedrock edition of Minecraft. That's mostly what I've done for game development. Is game development something you're interested in doing? And are you a programmer? Have you been programming long? If you are a programmer, are you an aspiring programmer? Let's see. All right. We want this check to fail. Um, but we want the to prefix string. We want it to be a bad value. We want this check to fail, but the whole goal is to get it to print out what this prefix string is, because that's what the test framework will do when this test fails, is it will print out. Oh, and how did you get into game devs? Like, what what are you doing to get into game dev? Well, this is perfectly valid. What's wrong with this thing? I'm getting everything parsed correctly. Yeah, that ends that progen. That ends that progen. It's setting a new value for the variable. It's like creating a new variable here in each of these places. Oh, that's kind of nifty. Are there any tools or frameworks that you're intending to use? What language are you going to attempt to recreate this thing in? Are you going to use like Redo or Unity or Unreal Engine? Are you going to try to code it from scratch in Vulkan? One of the projects I did when I was hanging around the university would be the best term for it, uh, and sort of taking classes, was a ray tracer, actually. Um, and the distinguishing feature of this ray tracer is that it would farm things out. It would split the task of ray tracing things up into a lot of little pieces and farm all those pieces out to a whole bunch of computers. And yeah, it was it was the early 90s and people weren't doing that kind of thing at all then. I should have actually written a paper about it, is what I should have done, but I didn't because I was an undergrad. Well, to me, what you should start with is something where you don't even have to care about any of that stuff, or care about as little as possible. Uh, Learn how to use Blender, because if the scene is reasonably complex, you probably want to mock it up in Blender. And then maybe once you've mocked it up in Blender, you can split out individual pieces, individual models from Blender that you use to make the scene with, and then sort of import those into some kind of rendering engine uh, of some sort. Maybe like one from uh, a game development engine like Redo or Unity or Unreal Engine or something like that. That's probably the easiest path. Or you could figure out how to write that kind of thing all by yourself, starting with Vulkan. But yeah. So why is this failing? What is okay? Debug. Somewhere in here, it's going to so token 16. Other. Oh, no, no. Yep, it's a semicolon. That's an identifier. That's exactly how that should be. Um, no, no, it's redo. Look it up. Look up redo game engine. Right there. Yes, I figured that that was the case. Um, uh, Redo is a fork of Godot. Because the Godot people were kind of being difficult about who was allowed to participate in their community. And a little bit more looking up here for our friend. There. But I don't know that Redo or Godot, for that matter, um, I don't know that either of those two game engines do 3D particularly well at this point. I know that they both do. Um, and I but I do know for certain that Unity, of course, does, and so does Unreal Engine. I mean, that's the thing Unreal Engine is known for. The Valheim is written using Unity. If you've ever played Valheim, there's a bunch of games that you probably are aware of that were written with Unity. Um, okay, so remainder should point somewhere. Well, huh. So what kind of thing is tokens? Tokens is a vector of variance. Okay. So remainder should be just an iterator. Yeah. So I'm getting a perfectly valid parse tree out of this, but somehow um, what's being passed back as the remainder is wrong. This would be what's passed back by the statement list as the array. Uh, so what does parse statement list do? Well, there's also parse top, which that's a thing now. maybe parse top does something funny if there were global. No, because otherwise then the other one would have failed, and it doesn't fail. So it can't just be that you have global variable declarations that makes this behave funny. Uh, that's no. Okay. So parse top just creates the parse context, and then it does the parse sequence. Um, and the parse context is the thing that contains all the scope information needed while the parsing is happening. So parse sequence, what does parse sequence do? Yeah. So by the time this finishes, start should be equal to finish. So tokenize input, uh, parse top. Did it call parse top wrong? It called parse top wrong, didn't it? Yes. What is it even doing? I need to ride herd on this stupid AI all the time. Why did it do such a crazy thing? This is just so ridiculous. Yes, that's what you should be doing. Why did you do the ridiculous thing? Of course that's going to fail. Ah, okay. Now what's going to happen when I run it? It has too many results. This should be one. This should be one. This should be one. Oh, I guess this is one too. Yes. Okay. Uh, yeah. Yes. Here's what we are going to do. Where do I use? I think we lost our uh, our friend. Well, I'm sad that we lost our friend. I'll not see here. Check that. Oh, hi there. Welcome back. Let's see here. I figured out what the problem was, and actually, here's the thing that we want to use. Except this is just a cut and paste from, uh, and then here, and then x would be 20. Would be also 20. And then this would be 10. Like that. All right. Oh. Yes, that is what I meant. So what do you think in general about the about your path? Do you have a plan of your own? Were you thinking about trying to use Blender? Okay. So this passed. That's good. At least my headphones make an obvious noise every time they shut down. Let's see. Okay, so that test is good, and that test does properly test shadowing. I want to do one more kind of test. Um, so I don't know a huge amount about modern 3D graphics. The ray tracer I wrote in the early 90s, yes, it was a ray tracer. Ray tracers, in a certain sense, are very simple. The thing that people makes the thing about them that people think is makes them people think they're complicated is the fact that they take a lot of time and they produce incredibly accurate results. They produce very nice looking scenes. But there's a reason why they do that, and it's because they're in fact very simple. Uh, they trace light. They trace the path of a light ray through the scene for each pixel. They basically reverse the path of the light ray through the scene for that pixel. Um, and the light that would hit that pixel, they kind of reverse back through the scene. And yeah, that's a very compute intensive task, but in a certain sense, it's also not a very complicated task. And oh, it's kind of amusing what this thing thinks is a loop because yes, I only have while. I don't have. Here's how we're going to do this. I want to test that the variable is created with a new value each time, but I don't really know how to do that. Um, that it's a different variable each time you go through there is no way to test that. But what the heck? I want to test this anyway. So that's how that should work. Um, Sure, go ahead. Yes, the graininess is almost certainly post-processing. People are right about that. Um, how many tokens are in this thing? Oh, so what you do with this is you start not by trying to recreate the entire scene. You create a really basic model of the scene that doesn't include any of the shading and stuff. Um, and then you figure out what to do with the lighting to get the shading the way you want it. That's what you do with a scene like that. Um, at least that's how I would approach it. Again, I'm not a games, I've not done 3D graphics work. My work on Minecraft was working on the make system and adding profiling that uh, hooks inside of the various pieces of code. I did actually go through some of their other code and noticed that they were doing some silly things and they should have a vector class that has some methods on it and use the vector class for things. And I had enough understanding of the math involved to know what they ought to do. And yeah, they weren't doing it. They had the same kind of thing repeated over and over and over again, getting the yeah. Anyway, um, I know, but as far as the actual code that did the rendering on screen of stuff in Minecraft, I never looked at it. So I haven't done anything with 3D rendering since the early 90s. But were I to approach this, I would basically try to mock up something that looked a little like this in Blender. Um, and just, the shape. I would get the shape correct. And then I would start adding the colors and stuff on top of it. Um, and if you put it together right in Blender, you will get out models for the individual pieces of the scene because you won't try and, you know, make the hills and the castle out of one object or one mesh. There'll be separate ones that you compose inside of Blender. Uh, and yeah, and the same for the trees. Each tree there is individual. They're not the same. But then once you've done this, there's a lot of post processing that people are correct. Like some of the glow that you get in the sky and stuff, you just can't make a 3D engine do directly. You have to add stuff to the end. And I don't know how you want the scene to look with the glow because it's not clear exactly where the glow is coming from and what it should look like if you rotate around the castle. Will the glow stay around the castle? Is the glow associated with a part of the sky? It's not easy to tell uh, from the scene. And that's a decision that you'd have to make. And that would inform how you would do the post processing effect to make the glow show up on the screen. Um, yeah. But the lighting is more about, hey, there it looks like it's a single light source. That's pretty easy. And the single light source is kind of it looks like it's an infinite distance light source. I'm pretty sure you can model that in Blender. Uh, and so uh, getting the shadows right, though, is hard. And that I don't know if Blender can do the shadows for you. That's something where you might actually have to fiddle around with a game engine to get the shadows to show up. Because the way the shadows are makes the scene look like it's moonlit. It looks moonlit is what it looks like. It's interesting. The moon is smaller and cast sharper shadows. It's a bigger arc in the sky, but it casts sharper shadows because the light actually is coming from, yeah, the sun is really big and it doesn't cast shadows that are as sharp as the moon shadows are, because light is coming actually from a lot of different directions. Um, yeah, that's what I'm. That's that's what I would do is play with Blender. But that is a nifty scene, and I can understand why you would want to recreate it. Does what I said about Blender make sense? Let's see here. I'm going to do a token count now while I'm waiting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 25, 26, 27, 28. Okay. Did I get it right? I'm nearly positive the token count will be right, but I just want to put this in here as part of the test. So let's actually run the test and find out whether the token count is right after the input is tokenized. Yep. Okay, good. Now, and what did we use up here again? Save result. Okay, and then we won't bother to check this. We'll check one. We'll change this to be oh, now this is going to be tricky. Count equals 3. I think the next one is var x equals 10. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to run this, find out what the sequence of values is, make sure that the sequence of values looks approximately correct, and then just put that list in here. That's what we're going to do. There's a whole lot of testing that's kind of the writing tests. There's value in having tests like that, where you run the program, find out what the output is, and then write a test to make sure that the output stays that way. Because part of the function of tests is to allow you to make changes to your program in the future without fear that you're going to break it. Or I won't put it that way, without fear that you will break it undetectably. The tests are designed to check to make sure that you haven't broken it by accident. Um, it makes it much easier to make changes. It makes it much freer to make changes to your program, because you know that if you make a mistake with your changes, your tests will catch you and make sure that uh, the mistake doesn't get out of hand. Um, Um, there's a lot of choices with that. Like, so there's a game called Satisfactory, and the people who made Satisfactory went through and made a whole big bunch of terrain by hand, and all that terrain is all made by hand. Um, and it's composed of a bunch of pieces that were put together, probably. Um, you can kind of tell that when you're looking at the terrain. You can kind of see some of the cracks where they pasted stuff together. And so they had a bunch of terrain elements that they then combined together to make their terrain as a whole. Uh, but they handcrafted all of the terrain. And that's given something like that, that's probably what you want to do. Like that's what Skyrim does, for example. Um, but other choices are to try to have something that automatically generates the terrain that looks approximately like what you're expecting. Um, the game Megabonk, for example, has automatically generated terrain like that. Um, the terrain is different every time you play. The other one, another game that's like that is Risk of Rain 2, is a 3D game where the 3D terrain is manufactured on the fly. It's algorithmically generated. But I'm guessing that given your specific interest in that scene and the moodiness of the scene and stuff, it seems like you want the terrain itself to be a part of the art of the game, in which case you probably want to handcraft all of the terrain. And there's a lot of techniques to handcrafting terrain. Um, the thing is if you think about the task as a whole before you start doing anything, um, I mean, there is some value in that because it helps you avoid uh, making some stupid mistakes. But there's also a problem with doing that in that you end up in a state of analysis paralysis. You're thinking about what am I going to do, like trying to plan the whole thing out in advance. And no plan survives contact with the enemy, right? So you want a plan that's just detailed enough to have you have a good idea of what the next step should be. And then you take that step and then you reevaluate and think through your plan again. Um, and so if you just think, I'm going to make all the terrain in Blender, then that's enough of a plan for now. And once you start working with Blender, because you don't even know how to use that tool, right? So step one is learn how to use Blender. Uh, and so you're really getting ahead of yourself when you're thinking, okay, suppose I make this terrain in Blender, then what do I do? You don't even know what the tool's capabilities are or anything. And so it's hard to know what to do when you don't know what you're working with. Right. So that's another part of it is not only do no plans survive contact with the enemy because they are with reality because they don't, and so over planning is a kind of mistake. Um, Also, uh, you're not even in a state where you can make a coherent plan uh, at all that will carry you for the entire project because there's too many things you don't know. And so instead, you have to plan for, I think I would really like to use this tool. A lot of people are telling me that this is the right tool for the job. I should sit down and experiment with this tool and find out what I can do with it and how. I should learn how to use it. Does that make sense? Let's see here. 0. Got 4 zeros. 1, 2. This statement should have resulted in something. Oh, that's right. That's this statement. So this statement is 4 zeros. Huh. Why 4 zeros? And then, oh, assignments always are 0. That's right. So 7, 0. Oh, 7. I see. 1, 2, 3. I guess this is a 4, and then 7. 1, 2, 7. 1, 2, 9. And then the result of the while as a whole. I mean, this doesn't look terribly wrong. I'm a little surprised the result of the while as a whole is not 9, because in general, blocks should have the result of the last thing that was evaluated within them. But while is kind of a weird special case, and I don't know that that's what I would want a while block to do. So this is not terrible. So I'll just put this in. And then we'll put actually. And then body of while loop. There we go. Yep, that's how that should work. You're welcome. All right. So we have this test. All right. So now I have a whole big bunch of diffs, some of which I want to commit and some of which I don't, because I began a bunch of changes before I realized I needed more tests. And I don't want to include any of those changes because every commit should be a single focused thing on one task. You shouldn't have a whole big bunch of unrelated changes in a single commit if you can help it. And so luckily, all of the changes that I want are isolated to one file, the parser test. And so I can just add a new commit for that file and we're good. Uh, and then the file that got changed was parser. There we go. All right. Now we have changes to this comment for the upcoming function declarations. And then other things that are needed, like I added the def keyword to introduce a function declaration, and now we have a punctuator, the comma. The reason why I wanted a punctuator category is maybe there'll be some kind of like dot or colon colon or something else. Colon colon is a punctuator, but I don't consider dot to be a punctuator. Dot is more of a no, dot is a punctuator too, but dash greater than is definitely an operator if we have a dash greater than at all. I don't even have pointers yet, so I don't even know if I'll add pointers, how far I want to take this. But I am thinking about having actual types that are not just unsigned integers. In fact, having function declarations is a step along the road to having types, because there'll be identifiers that are not unsigned integers. They will refer to functions. But these are focused on the changes needed to make the tokens work. Yes. So now we're going to implement the tokens. One of the things we are going to use AI for here, I don't generally like using, I've actually had several different struggles with AI during this, even this session, where AI did the wrong thing. And I trusted it too much, and it took me a bit to figure out, oh, AI messed me up here. And that kind of annoys me. But it's actually not uncommon with my experience with AI. Um, I just do not understand people who vibe code. Like, one, how does the AI ever even get to a state where it generates valid code? Like, I've had so many places where I asked an AI to do some of the coding for me, and I've had to like look carefully. Problem is it's good enough that it's very tempting to not look carefully. Um, take the mental shortcut. Uh, AI is the potentially the if you're using it incorrectly, it's the death of understanding, and that is a very bad thing. People should understand the things. Okay. So this is a test. I want the tokenizer test. So I am going to ask the AI, start again. That was me fighting with the AI about something. Um, I have to give it the diff because it's not smart enough to use Mercurial to do that. Stupid AI. I know, right? I don't. When has bugs, it's like, no, I'm not going to have you fix them because you're just going to make even more of a mess than you already made with the bugs in the first place. Anyway, I should be signing off in about within about 10 minutes. We're going to try doing this test update. Um, so this is a model that's, I think there's a different, they didn't train their own model. I think they're using somebody else as a back end. I'm not sure. The people who make Sea Lion, which is this, the people who make Sea Lion, which is this IDE that I'm using, have an AI agent of their own called Junie. So I'm having Junie do it. Um, I could, in fact, ask either Claude or ChatGPT to do it. This thing has integrations with both of those. Um, oh, huh. So let's see what it did. It's got the syntax for what tokens look like wrong, or what function definitions look like incorrect. But that's okay. This is a tokenizer test, not a parser test, and so it doesn't matter whether any of this stuff is correct. Um, but some keyword def, yep, 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 yep. That's right. Uh, yep. That's okay. So those are good tests. And that's a good set of tests here. It makes sure that the two things that I want to have work actually work. And I believe that the test is correct. I wouldn't. So, especially when you're learning, there's kind of a balance to be struck when you're learning stuff. And so you kind of want to do a lot of trial and error yourself because you learn a lot of things through trial and error that you would never learn if you just followed a set of instructions that accomplished it for you. On the other hand, Claude is going to give you a set of instructions that won't work. And so it will uh, steer you into error. And then you'll end up having to figure it out what the error is that Claude made. And so there's your trial and error for you. And I don't know if you'd rather generate your own errors or convince Claude to generate the errors for you, but that's that that's what's going on here. Um, again, it's important to understand things, and so yes. So this is probably too long. Yep. So it's 8 characters too long. uh, yes. I can imagine that that would be frustrating to diagnose and to figure out an IP conflict with another device. Mm, ARP traffic, looking at ARP traffic, a TCP dump. My approach to this would have been TCP dump and looking at what was coming over, and then I would have noticed the ARP traffic and the bizarreness of the ARP traffic, because there would have been some ARP traffic that just didn't look right. Do you know what ARP is? I presume IPv4. Um, IPv6, totally different ball game, and I would have absolutely no clue how you'd end up with two things that ended up with the same IPv6 address on a network. So I doubt it was IPv6. Not something that generally happens with IPv6. But anyway, the equivalent of ARP in IPv6 is the neighbor discovery protocol. Okay, so I think we're at a stopping point now. One of the things that I'm realizing is that I think I'm going to add this very quickly uh, before I end the stream. Um, my comment also needs a function call. Oh, this is really tricky. Um, yes, this is really tricky because a function call is is a term. No, it's a function call is a factor. Uh, it basically sits at uh, oh, this is interesting. Uh, this is where it belongs. Um, but it's going to be tricky. I guess it's not that tricky. Um, but identifier, and then uh, it will have to try out whether it's if it's an identifier, it will have to try out whether it's a identifier or a function call. So we'll put a function call right here, right next to identifier. And it should look for a function call before it decides that it's an identifier. Because one of the problems with function calls that starts with identifier. Um, and so uh, if we pick identifier and look at it first, we'll see, oh, there's an identifier. And then we will try to parse the rest of the expression. We'll go, oh, but we can't do that because the rest of the expression is an open paren, and that isn't a valid next token in our expression. And then things will fall apart there. And then we'll have to go and find out, okay, let's try if it's a function call. Okay, we already know it's an identifier. Let's see if it's then has an open paren. Oh, that's a function call. And then we can try parsing the function call. But if we do it as a function call first, one, we can have a nested test for the identifier. Are we looking at an identifier? And then once we're looking at an identifier, we can test, is the next token an open paren? Then it's a function call. Otherwise, we just saw an identifier. Um, so that's what we can do here. Um, but function call should probably be its own function in the parser, because it's its own production. Every production has a function. And so, but still, if we do it in this order, we save ourselves a lot of work. We look for a function call first before looking for an identifier all by itself. We save ourselves a lot of work, because if we find, when we look for an identifier all by itself and we're looking at a function call, we'll see the identifier and then we'll try to parse the rest of the expression and it will get all confused. But otherwise, yeah. In fact, it might not even make it down to trying to parse the factor again at all. Um, yeah. So we need to check where a function call first. And if we don't see a function call, then we check to see whether it's just a regular old identifier. All right. Now, there's going to be some constraints here that can't be expressed in the grammar. And those constraints have to do with, of course, the identifier will have to have been declared before we look at it. And then also, we're going to have to add something to know what type the identifier is. Is the identifier for a normal variable or is it for a function? And only certain identifiers will be allowed in certain contexts. But that's not something that can be expressed in the grammar here. We could split out identifiers, but there's no way in the grammar to tell when we're looking at an identifier whether it's identifying, whether it's an identifier for a variable or an identifier for a function. So there's just no way in the grammar to do this. This has to be kind of stuff that happens as part of the parse, but can't be expressed in the grammar. Um, so yeah. And let's just make sure that that my comment was accurate. Indeed, it was. Okay. Okay. So we're going to push to GitHub, and I'm going to bid you all good evening. So you want to go look on GitHub for it. It's in omniferia/CTRE lexer. Is where you can find the code that I've been working on. And it's been nice talking to all of you, and I hope that you all have a good night as well. Let's see here.